We're going to be looking at the top 15 most dropped players over at ESPN.com to see whether or not there are some opportunities to be had. Whether or not we should be picking these guys up, dropping them, or just seeing what's going on with the market. But what you need to do right now is click that subscribe button right now. Tap it with your finger on your phone. Click it with the mouse on the computer because we're covering the waiver wire extensively every day. We're helping you set your lineups and everything else. Plus, Ric Flair's watching you. You do not want to disappoint him. Click that button. Stop missing out. And you know what? I'll be back with you next year, too, once your season's done. So you may want that for your research. But looking at the top wide receiver being dropped over at ESPN.com, it's KJ Osborne. Hasn't been productive as of late. He has been dealing with a concussion injury here. And also, Justin Jefferson is coming back. We do not have a lot of volume in the passing game as well. So this is not good for KJ Osborne's fantasy upside. So I can see why people are dropping him, especially now that things are slowing down. Jefferson's going to be back, soaking up the targets. TJ Hawkinson is soaking up targets as well. There's really not much room with lower volumes for KJ Osborne to eat here. Joshua Palmer's on IR with a knee injury. Don't know when he'll be back, but doesn't look like there's a guaranteed timeline that he will be back. So he can be stashed on IR if you could do that, or you can release him to the wild. If he does come back, it might be really late into the season anyways, and you may want to be scrapping for upside plays right now anyways. Really depends on your situation. He's rostered almost 30% of leagues, 28.4. Probably good to go back to the waiver wire. If you have an IR spot and you don't have it filled up, sure, you can really take advantage of that. But still, if you're fighting for the playoffs and you need to play with some lottery tickets, you may have to make that move. Michael Thomas is dealing with an injury as well right now, but he's been off and on, more down throughout the back half of the season. He showed some signs of life earlier in the year, but it's not really hitting. We're getting some of these young wide receivers on the team starting to hit. A.T. Perry did some stuff last week. Rashid Shaheed's been a breath of fresh air, getting the air yards. Michael Thomas, yeah, it's all right to have him as a stash. He's rostered in 70% of leagues, but my overall opinion, I do not see you putting him into your lineups and him winning your leagues. I see him maybe having a game here and there if he gets back to health. But honestly, I don't see him as a league winner. You might be good to release him back to the waiver wire. Josh Downs is going back to the waiver wire. And this is where I see some opportunities here. Rostering just 46.1% of leagues. He did have an injury hiccup a few weeks back and hasn't been productive over these last few weeks with just 8 fantasy points. But as we know, he was trending up. He was getting targets. He was getting over a 20% target share. He was getting volume, and that's something you want out of your wide receivers, and that's something I want on the back end of my roster, and I know the Colts are going to have some good matchups going forward, as every team's got a good matchup, at least one of them, for the rest of the season. You can play with Josh Downs in your lineup off and on throughout the rest of the season, and you know what? There's going to be volatility. That happens with wide receivers, especially with his quarterback situation and everything else. He's not the number one guy there. Expect volatility, but when you're expecting volatility, you're also expecting those upswings as well. Josh Downs is good to have on your roster. Tutu Atwell, good to release right now. The volumes are lower in LA. Cooper Kupp's back. Really should have been released a long time ago. Looks like a lot of the market's been doing so, slowly but surely. Does have some speed, does have some upside, but I think it's time to look the other way here. Christian Watson. And the thing about these Packers wide receivers, I talk about them every day, but they take their turns in this offense of being productive. In any given matchup, one will be productive, one will be okay, or mid, or however you want to say it, and one will suck. They'll take their turns, and the market's saying, hey, we kind of like this. We're picking them up off waivers. And the other side of the market's saying, hey, we don't like this. We're dropping him to the waivers. He's still rostered in a lot of leagues. The world's not dropping him, but there's a subset of people that are. He is banged up right now, and he's banged up a lot, and that's a headache. Hasn't been productive for quite a bit now. That's something that worries a lot of fantasy managers. However, he is getting a lot of air yards, which equates to upside, which equates to splash games, which is something you may want on your roster. If he's sitting there on the waiver wire, you may want to look at him. You may want to look at that, because if he's getting air yards like this, about 100 a game or so, you're going to want that, because in plus matchups or when the game script rolls his way, he's going to be a big hitter. He's a guy to gamble with at least. Jameson Williams, when we talk about air yards, this is the guy that we were looking to earlier in the season. He is trending to be a catastrophic bust for the Detroit Lions. We're going to give him some grace, a little bit more time, but it is trending that way. He had some drop issues earlier, and we're starting to get back right with a little bit of an increased snap share here, but we really need to cash in on some deep balls. He's a Will Fuller type wide receiver. The downs are super down, and the ups are super up. The ups are far in between, but those ups will win your matchups. Great for DFS if he's hitting. Really great once he starts going on some runs here. But honestly, in fantasy, he's a headache. Even when he's going to be hot, he's going to be a headache. If he's going to be hot, he's still going to be a headache. That's the type of wide receiver he's going to be. If he starts hitting, he's still going to be a headache. Right now, he's not giving you anything. If you need a stash play for the back half of the season due to potential air yards, then maybe. But if you need to start looking at other options, go ahead. Rashied. So this is another version of Jameson Williams, but he cashes in. This is what Jameson Williams should be looking like. 24 fantasy points, then 5, then 7, then a few more down weeks, then a 20 spot, then a few more down weeks, then a 20 spot, and it's up and down, but you use that on the back end of your roster as a lottery ticket when times are tough, and you hope you cash in because you want to use them to win your matchup, and you want to swing for the home run fence instead of just trying to get by, because just trying to get by could hit that down spot as well of like 5 to 7 fantasy points. He's rostered in just 25% of leagues. I can understand why he's getting dropped right now with 2 dud games back to back, considering he's not a star player. But again, when you look at him, he's a guy that can blow up any given week because he's getting deep targets, he's getting volume. That's something you want to look at for, and that's something you may want on the back end of your roster. And if you're hurting at wide receiver, you don't know what to do at wide receiver, you know what? A guy like this, you put in your lineup, close your eyes and pray. You might hit a time or two throughout the season, and that might be enough to win you an extra game or two and get you into the playoffs. So you really got to understand what kind of asset you're picking up here, what kind of asset you're dropping, and not just him, just other wide receivers in general who has the same profile of that boom-bust category. Kind of like a Gabe Davis, but a little different. Maybe more of the booms are few and far between, but you still need to know what you're getting into when you're looking at these players. Romeo Dubose, same thing, just a different Packers wide receiver like Watson. These wide receivers, they take turns being the guy, they take turns being mid, and they take turns busting. And we see that throughout the season. It's been the trend all year long. Jaden Reed's the hot hand right now. Jaden Reed's been hot off and on this season as well. Watson's been hot a few times. Dubs has been hot a few times. Last 3 weeks, 11 fantasy points, 6 fantasy points, and then 12 fantasy points in week 10. And some people are releasing him to waivers. And then I hear a lot of people picking him up as a hot waiver wire claim. The thing about him is he could produce on any given week because he could be the guy. He's also a little bit more steady than what some people make him out to be. If he just got released to waivers, might be a guy to look at to pick up. Josh Reynolds, I think the dream might be done here. He might get some upside weeks down the line, but you're not going to know when to start him. He is seeing some snaps here in offense that can push the pace, score some points. So that might be something you're interested in, especially if you're like in a 14-teamer, maybe even a 16-teamer. And a 16-teamer is rostered. Guaranteed so. If he's on waivers, he's barely there. He's like the top option. But the targets haven't been there as of late. Saw 4 last week, but the production has been quiet. He's been in a major slump. And he hit earlier this season, but it's not coming our way anymore, and that's understandable. The running backs are hitting hard. Amon-Ra St. Brown's hitting hard. Sam Laporta is soaking up targets too, hurting the ancillary wide receivers, and then they're trying to figure out Jameson Williams as well. Trayon Burke, he's always been hurt. He's always been injured. You can't really get a good read on this guy because he's never healthy for a full run here to really get a good look at him. That's not very encouraging. We're on the Titans offense. Will Levis, we're excited about him, but it's deep ball city to DeAndre Hopkins, which it should be. He's soaking up like 36% of the targets or 34 or something like that, like a large amount. That's making it hard for these other wide receivers to eat. He's not even on the field half the time anyways. It's hard to rely on other wide receivers in this offense. He's good to go on the waiver wire. Maybe he gets a run sometime, maybe next year, year after, or something like that. He is a first-round pick, but odds are stacking against him right now. Sky Moore. So I was right on the Chiefs offense, just not to this degree. I figured Patrick Mahomes is going to make it hard to figure out which wide receiver you want to start, but one's probably going to hit every week. The thing is, you don't know which wide receiver you want to start, but they're not hitting every week. So I was kind of right, kind of not. I called that in the beginning. I thought Sky Moore would be in the mix. I figured he'd have up and down games. Same with Rice. Same with the other guys. I figured you want one of them, and you play the matchups when you're hurting because it's a Chiefs wide receiver, and you don't know what bag you're going to pull out, and you don't know what you're going to get from them. But really, it's been ugly this year. The targets are short. The ADOTs on all these wide receivers are short, making it hard. They're in and out of the offense, and when it comes to snap share, they're not getting a consistent flow of targets. Sky Moore's not been hitting. Sky Moore's good to go to the waiver wire. Zay Jones, he's been hurt all year. He's not cashing out much. He's hurt right now. We're seeing if he can come back and play. Had a domestic violence issue. Maybe when he's back, you can pick him up. But how much longer can you wait? How much longer can you wait? He's rostered in 20% of leagues. That seems about right, considering he's a wide receiver stash since he has been productive in this offense before. But still, if you can't wait any longer, just make the move. George Pickens. It's been slow as of late, especially with Deontay Johnson there and back. Seeing a huge target share. More boom bust now than ever before. And that's okay. And you got to know what you're getting into. Boom bust wide receivers can help you. They can hurt you too. People are starting to drop him, but he's still rostered in 86% of leagues. Not meaning people are dropping him right now. Still a good wide receiver in NFL terms, fantasy production-wise. Things just got to iron out. Some of those targets got to hit. We got to see this volume start to increase a little bit. But still, George Pickens is not really a guy you want to add to the waiver wire. Rashied Rice, another Chiefs wide receiver. I threw Kadarius Toney there too. He's at 17. People are dropping the Chiefs wide receivers because you can't trust them. They're not consistent. It's a mixed bag with these guys. They're in and out. The targets aren't consistent. Patrick Mahomes is the Bill Belichick of quarterbacks, like Bill Belichick with running backs back in the day. You didn't know which one you want to start. Same here with the Chiefs wide receivers, except you really don't want to start any of them anymore, but maybe one will splash here and there. Rashied Rice is good as a stash play because he's hit more than a lot of these other wide receivers, but I can understand you wanting to make that move. 53% roster rate seems okay. I feel like he could still splash on the back end of the season if more targets goes his way. Again, these wide receivers can go in slumps, especially in an offense like this, but this is a trend that people are dumping the Chiefs wide receiver. Those are 15 players who are being dropped over at ESPN. Those are the top guys that are going back to the waiver wire who you might be able to pick up in your league, or you might want to think about dropping off your team. Whatever you think's going on with that player, whatever you need to do off the waiver wire, go ahead and do it. Shoot your shots. Scared money, don't make money. So make a couple splash plays happen. See if you can turn that team around. If you're one of the top dogs in your league, keep doing what you're doing. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Hit that subscribe button. Stop missing out. Ric Flair's watching you. Don't disappoint him. I want to thank you for watching. Catch you on the next video.